you know what? We touched on some NFL. You just touched on some NBA. You know what? We're going to touch a third sport. We're diversifying here on the Strictly Business podcast. We're going to talk a little bit of Major League Baseball. Because guess what? The playoff race is starting to heat up. The regular season is coming to a close. You know which teams are good, which teams aren't at this point now. And now, Mike Ritz, obviously you're watching a bit of baseball before this podcast started. Your Mets won. So now I ask you, what's really stood out to you in this past week in baseball? What are you looking forward to as this playoff race starts to come full swing?
I mean, this American League wild card race is very good. Is very, very good to watch. Just because, first of all, Oakland is playing. Oakland Athletics are playing like they don't even want to be in the playoffs right now. I think I've read in the last 10 games, they lost 7 of them. They've just been playing terrible baseball. But they still maintain that wild card spot, the top wild card spot. But this whole race between Kansas City and Detroit, very good. Seattle is right there. Between those three teams, Kansas City, Detroit, and Seattle, only a half game separates them. So that is definitely something to keep an eye on. You have Toronto, Cleveland, and the Yankees still chomping at the bit there. So it's definitely something to look at. But then also in the National League wild card race, Frisco and Pittsburgh have, as of right now, the Giants and the Pirates have the top 2 wild card spots. But then Atlanta's just a game and a half out. Milwaukee's a game and a half out. The Miami Marlins are only 3.5 games back, and then Mike Ritz's New York Mets are still right there. They're still right there at 5.5 games back.
There's hope. There's hope.
There's hope. People are saying the Yankees still have a shot. You're basically saying the Mets have a shot too, because we're generally in the same area. I think right now the Yankees won today, so they're 5 games out. The Mets are 5.5. So I mean, we have a shot too. We have a shot too. But yeah, no, these wild card races are insane because nobody wants to play that 1-game playoff. I think that's what it comes down to. Nobody wants their whole season to be decided by 1 game.
Yeah. Listen, I'm gonna tell you, you know me, Boston Red Sox fan. Our season's over. I went to the game last night. They lost. They got killed today as well. They're not even playing with any heart anymore. Dustin Pedroia is out for the year. But I'm going to tell you right now, I'm rooting for a darling, and I'm rooting for the Kansas City Royals because this team doesn't do anything great, but they haven't had playoff success in so long, and they're competing with the Detroit Tigers, who made that move for David Price, and everyone was like, oh, my God, the division is theirs to lose now, and their pitching staff is unbeatable. But guess what? Verlander gets hurt. Price has pitched well, but they're not hitting that well. And right now, Kansas City is playing Detroit, and they're tied for the division lead. They're playing right now, and the score is 2-0 Kansas City in the top of the 9th. So it looks like they'll take a 1-game lead. But I am so curious to see what happens to the Kansas City Royals. And also, did the Pittsburgh Pirates come out of nowhere? Because I get the apps, I get the updates on my phone because my girlfriend's from Pittsburgh, and I've been to PNC Park, and I'm a big fan of Andrew McCutchen. And it seems like they lose every game that I look at, but yet somehow they're in the wild card as a second team. It seems to me like they've come out of nowhere.
Yeah, they're just a team that nobody really talks about, and they're back in it again this year. They obviously had a good year last year, and they're going to be. It looks like, I mean, that's still a tough race because Atlanta is always going to be Atlanta. So yeah. I think I still a part of me still thinks Atlanta's going to find their way to get themselves into the playoffs. I mean, I will say Atlanta still has to play the Mets three times, so you never know. But
spoilers.
but yeah, no. Pittsburgh. I feel like nobody really talks about Pittsburgh, but it's going to be these next couple weeks are going to be interesting to see, especially with the wild card implications. It's really good baseball to watch.
Yeah. Also, can we talk about the decline of the Milwaukee Brewers, please? They have lost 4 in a row. They have lost 9 out of their last 10. They have just crumbled, and St. Louis has risen to the top, winning 7 of their last 10. The Brewers were hot for so long, and then everything just fell apart. Now, granted, at the beginning of the year when they were playing so well, I didn't think they'd be able to hold on to it, but they held on to it until after the All-Star break, and I started to be like, well, I'll be damned. Like, the Brewers can make the playoffs, and they were awful last year. But it boggles my mind that the Brewers are even. It's still like that they collapsed as badly as they did after being so good for so long.
Yeah, I mean that's a great point. Baseball is a funny game, and when you get into a funk, sometimes it's really, really hard to get out. And the Brewers have been in a couple month-long funk, and you can't be doing that when when a team like the Cardinals, probably one of the best organizations in baseball, is
the best organization in baseball, the best organization from top down to bottom of baseball.
Yeah, they just always do the right thing, and that's it's a tough team to keep down. So if you're going to continue to lose, you better, you know that the Cardinals are going to come back and play well. So yeah, the Brewers really have really been on the decline, and they're playing themselves out of a playoff spot, and they're in that mix in the National League wild card spot where nothing's guaranteed right now. But I would be surprised if Milwaukee makes the playoffs, because right now Miami, the Marlins are playing better than the Braves are playing better than them. So I'd be surprised if Milwaukee gets that second playoff spot.
I agree. And also, in the American League, a talking point for me is how good does Robinson Cano feel right now? Going to the Mariners, most likely going to have a better chance of making the wild card than the New York Yankees, the team that he left. How good does he feel right now?
I mean, I think he'll feel good if he makes the playoffs this year. A lot of work to be done, but yeah, I think a lot of people were giving him flack for going to Seattle because they didn't think that his career ended by going to Seattle. Meanwhile, he's fighting for a wild card spot, just like the Yankees are. So, I mean, I unfortunately know to never count out the Yankees, so I'm not counting them out yet. But Seattle is right now in a better situation than the Yankees are. The thing that's getting the Yankees and obviously getting the Mets is that there's a lot of teams ahead of them. They may be only 5 or 5.5 games back, but when you have 4 or 5 different teams ahead of you, it's so hard to continue to move up. So in the last couple weeks of the season, in these last 20 games of the year, you really need from top to bottom. If you're a team fighting for a playoff spot, you really need to play your best baseball right now and try to win. Go 15-5 in your next 20 games because it's so hard, especially if you are on the bottom trying to get that second wild card spot. There's only so much room you can move up. You really got to play some flawless baseball in these last 20 games.
Yeah. So all right. So now I'm going to put you on the spot. Who are going to be the 2 wild card teams from each division? Each league, American League, National League. Excuse me.
And well, I think Detroit's going to win the division.
Okay.
So, which leaves Kansas City fighting for a playoff spot. Man, this is tough. I think Oakland's definitely going to get the first wild card. So it's Oakland and, I mean, just because I would love to see them, I would love to see Kansas City make it. So I'm going to say Kansas City, but gun to my head, I think it's going to be Seattle, and I think Kansas City is going to get edged out. So, gun to my head, I think it's going to be Oakland and Seattle in those last 2, and Kansas City is going to get pushed out towards the end of the year, which I'm going to be sad about. But I think Kansas City, I think Seattle has great hitting, and I think that's what's going to drive Seattle into the playoffs. And so that's my American League. What about you?
In my American League, I got Oakland in that top spot. I agree with you. I think that their pitching is going to be too good down the stretch, and that they'll get the wild card. And then listen, if they win that play-in game, if you got to face Oakland in a series, you're scared just because you know how dominant their starting pitching can be. So, I mean, the thing is that they're going to be forced to play that one play-in game where anything can happen. But I think that they'll get that first game, that first wild card. And then for me, I have the Royals winning the division over the Tigers. I'll let that be known because if you look at Kansas City's schedule, they got the Red Sox next, who are terrible. They got the White Sox, who are terrible. Then they got the Tigers again, and then they got the Indians. So two division teams that are going to be tough matchups. But then they end the season against the White Sox. So they got three series with bad teams, and then they got two series with division rivals who are also fighting for playoff spots. So I think they'll be forced to compete in those two big divisions, and they'll get wins against the easy teams. So that leaves Seattle and Detroit. I don't think the Yankees or Toronto are getting in. I think I'm going to ax them out. And I'm going to be honest, I think that Seattle is going to get that second wild card. I agree with you. And I think that Detroit's going to be left in the dust and wondering how they possibly didn't make the playoffs with David Price, Max Scherzer, and that starting rotation. I think that's going to be the end result.
That'll be a crazy instance if Kansas City bumps Detroit out of the playoffs. You have Detroit. I have Detroit winning the division. You have Kansas City winning the division. And so what we're basically saying is if you don't win that division, you are out of the playoffs because we both have faith in Seattle. So if you don't win the AL Central, you're not getting into the playoffs because we both believe Seattle's chomping at the bit.
Yep. All right. So who you got in the National League? Who are your two teams?
This is tough. I think the National League. I think the Giants are there. The Giants are there. They're the top spot right now in the wild card. So I think the Giants are a shoo-in. And I just it hurts to say this. I really think Atlanta is going to somehow move their way into the second spot. But I'm going to be hopeful and say Pittsburgh. I think it's going to be the way it is right now, Giants and Pittsburgh. But really don't be surprised if somehow stupid Atlanta will get to the playoffs yet again. Obviously, I'm a dejected Mets fan who just watches the Braves get in every year. But the Braves are just a game and a half out. They do playoffs, so I hope we can play spoiler to the Braves, which would be great. So for the sake of the podcast, I'm going to say the Giants and the Pirates are going to be the two wild card teams.
Yeah, I got to say I agree with you. In terms of looking at the National League, I don't think Atlanta has enough. I really don't. I think Milwaukee's going to continue crumbling down and just crashing hard at the end of the year. And oh man, I said at the beginning of the season that Miami would compete for a wild card. And I'm so happy that they're there now in the conversation because I feel like I can say I was right because I thought that team had great pitching and they had oh my God, I'm forgetting his name, Hernandez, his last name, right? Who was their agent?
Oh, the Marlins? Yes, it was Jose Fernandez.
Jose Fernandez. Imagine what the record would be with Jose Fernandez in that rotation. You got to think that's at least 10 more wins. At that point, though, they'd be 81 and 62. That's absolutely crazy. And they'd say they would be competing with Washington at the top of the division if Jose Fernandez was in that rotation right now. So I think that injury looms really large right now, which is why they don't get in. But I agree with you. San Francisco, they got a 3.5-game wild card lead. And I think Pittsburgh hangs on. And I think that the Pirates fans will get playoffs for the second straight year in Pittsburgh, which is something they're definitely not used to.
Yeah, no, that goes without saying. Obviously, Pittsburgh has had their struggles, but yeah, no, I agree. And it's going to be a wacky couple weeks of baseball. September's always fun. But you got the start of the NFL, and then you got all these baseball implications. So I just cross my fingers and hope the Yankees don't make playoffs.
Yeah, yes, fingers crossed that doesn't happen. If they finish third below Toronto, it makes me feel even better. Because the lower they finish, the better I feel. It's just a natural thing. But I will say that that Syracuse's last game is in Boston. It's absolutely nuts. My roommate, who's a Yankee fan, actually just bought tickets to $250 bleacher seats to watch Syracuse's last game at Fenway. So I'm really curious to see what Fenway's reaction is going to be to him. I think it's going to be a long-standing ovation. I think they appreciate what it's going to be, and it's going to be so weird. I'm not going to the game because I can't spot $250. No way. But it's going to be curious to see in my mind what Red Sox fans do and what they give him because he's been the ultimate competitor against them for God knows how long. So that's just a side note. I'm curious to see what the Red Sox do there as the Yankee season comes to a close.
Yeah, it's kind of awkward to end possibly, depending if the Yankees make a run or not in the last 20 games, your last game of your career is going to be in the building of your arch rival. And it's going to be weird to see, Red Sox fans giving this guy a standing ovation. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of Yankee fans there as well, taking the trip out to see Derek Jeter's last game. So, I'll be happy because all of this, farewell tour will be over. They had Derek Jeter Day. Apparently, Derek Jeter only had one day to celebrate him retiring. Meanwhile, I think every day of this season has been Derek Jeter Day with the gifts and the standing ovations and stuff like that. It was really drawn out, but that's just me being me. But
no, I completely agree with you. I completely agree.
Yeah, it's obviously going to be a touching scene. Obviously, Derek Jeter has been the face of baseball for so long, but it's just scheduling MLB had to take a look at that, and it's going to be like, wow. Even on the off chance that the Yankees didn't make the playoffs, he can end his career in Fenway Park. It's going to be an interesting scene, but I don't think he's not going to get one boo. It's going to be a long-standing ovation, and it's going to be nice for Yankee fans to see.
Yeah, so I think Red Sox fans will treat him very classy. And also, side note, I have on my TV muted right now The Daily Show, and he is right now, based off his body language, is bashing the NFL. So I'm gonna have to stay up late and watch The Daily Show rerun of him bashing Roger Goodell because it looks absolutely hilarious, and I recommend it to everyone.
Yeah,
Side note,
I can only imagine. I can only imagine.